This week I have the distinct pleasure of introducing Oscar Ibarra from the University of California, Santa Barbara, who will tell us everything he knows about membrane computing. So let's welcome him.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank Ravi and George for inviting me to give a talk here. It's a very nice campus. Let's see. Where is my... Should I? Maybe. Okay, so today's talk concerns computing in nature. So let me first. Here's the campus, the map of the University of California, Santa Barbara. Very nice place. It's one of the 11 campuses of the University of California system. Right here we have the computer science building, just a few yards away from the Ritz. So during lunchtime you can see the students enjoying the Ritz. About 10 miles from north of campus is the home of the movie stars. Very expensive real estate.
Still expensive?
Still expensive. See, the expensive homes are still expensive. I mean, they can afford, right? They don't care. So, I hope, that's not me. That's my son. No, not. But anyway, so the talk today concerns natural computing, and it's an area where we're interested in what's happening in nature computing. We want to abstract computing from the way nature computes. And it involves many areas: biology, mathematics, computer science, and engineering. By the way, I should have mentioned that Ravi was my student when?
80.
Yeah, many years ago.
87.
Alright, so here's some motivation. We all know Moore's law. In the early 60s, he predicted that every year and a half, the number of transistors in a square inch of integrated circuit will double. So here's the graph. Right. Well, it's clear that this cannot be maintained. In fact, we now have multiple core CPUs, desktops and servers are now multiple cores. Okay, so parallel computing. So we need models, paradigms, new theories for solving computationally hard problems. Problems that are theoretically solvable, but in practice will take an enormous amount of time, many years. So I don't know if you've heard of the problems that are exponentially hard to compute. The National Science Foundation has actually an area called Emerging Technologies, and they're interested in advancing the capabilities of computer information sciences. They want to test untested theories. In fact, the talk I'm going to give, the area, we were able to get a grant for this. And it involved a number of areas: computer science, engineering, mathematics, biology, and other sciences. So here's the outline of the talk. Since I only have now 40 minutes, I'm going to give the basic model of what membrane computing is, give some examples and some results. And then if I have time, I'll talk about model for the how the brain, the spikes work in the brain, and some conclusion. Okay, so here's a diagram where we have three columns. In biology, we have brain, evolution, DNA, which involves molecules. And the talk I'm going to give concerns cells. Now, in the models we have for brain, we have neural computing. The people have run experiments involving neural computing. Evolution, we have evolutionary computing. DNA, it has been shown that using the properties of DNA sequences, you can solve very difficult problems efficiently. And this has been shown many years ago by Edelman at USC. And on the right side, we have the implementation. So here we have we've done software implementation. DNA has been shown that it can be done in the laboratory, lab. Now we are introducing a new model called membrane computing, which is computing within a cell, whereas DNA is computing within a molecule. So membrane computing is, in a way, includes DNA computing. But unfortunately, there's no implementation yet. So for now, all the results are either theoretical or software simulation. Okay. Again, if I have time, I'll talk about a model for the brain. It also goes under here. Okay, so what is membrane computing? It's a relatively new branch of molecular computing. This was initiated a few years back by a person by the name of George Spaun. He's a Romanian, and so this has since then many papers have been written, and what it is identifies unconventional model, natural model of computing called P system, and you know why it's called P for its name. Okay, it's an abstraction of the way living cells compute, and this will become apparent when I give an example. And again, okay, so maybe it's better to give an example here this one. Okay, so here's I got this from the web. I asked my student to go to the web, and she came back with this structure of a cell. Now, don't ask me what the membranes are. I cannot even pronounce the names. But suffice to say that it's composed of membranes. Okay. So when we define membrane computing, the membrane computer will have also membranes. Here's another one. Again from the web. Okay. All right. So what is the model? Maybe an example first. Okay. Here's a very simple example of a membrane system. I have here 4 membranes. I have 1, 2, 3, 4 membranes. Okay. And this is the very basic model. Each membrane may contain molecules, which are represented by, in this case, in this membrane, outer membrane 1, I have 2 molecules called A. I represent this by symbols, 2 A's, 3 B's, and 2 C's. It's not important. The order is not important. So I'm just interested in the multiplicity, the number. The number of A's is 2, 3 B's, and 2 C's. In membrane 2, I have 1 molecule called A. Here's E. In membrane 3 is D. Right? So this so each each membrane contains a multi-set of objects, of molecules. Multi-set means the number of occurrences is and within its membrane, in this example I have 4 membranes, there are evolution rules. These are rules that are supposedly biologically motivated. Okay, so in membrane number 1 I have 3 rules. I will describe this in a minute. There are 3 rules, R1, R2, R3. In membrane 2 there are 2 rules, S1 and S2. At this point there are no rules in 3 and 4. A membrane that does not contain any other membrane is called an elementary membrane. Elementary. The outside the membrane system is surrounded by the environment, so we'll call this outside area the environment, just like the skin. And sometimes this is called a skin membrane. The outermost membrane is called a skin membrane. The rules again are an example we'll make is the rules are applied in a parallel manner, which I will describe by an example. Because if I have to define everything, it will take 45 minutes. But examples will. And maximally parallel means all rules are applied. All rules that are applicable must be applied. So it can solve combinatorially hard problems efficiently. So let me go back to this. So it's if you have any questions, yes. So it's the system consists of a finite number of membranes, and is arranged in a Venn diagram, a tree structure. So for example, here, the outermost membrane is the root membrane. Then it contains second one, and the second one contains 2 membranes. So it's a tree-structured arrangement. Now the rules are supposedly, I say supposedly because it has not been implemented yet. Okay, and the rules are during the computation the rules evolve, and so the rules apply to the objects in the membrane. So the rules can change the objects within membrane, or it can transfer objects between membranes. And it can also create new membranes. So one membrane can say, okay, I want to create, there are rules for this. And they can merge membranes. Okay? We'll see this. And the rules are applied in a maximal manner. So let me give an example. Okay. So here's a simple example. Again, I'll just give the basic model. So you have here 3 membranes. Oh, I have to make it clear that to make the system non-trivial, we assume that the outermost membrane, the environment, has an unbounded supply of objects. You see? Because if the environment has a fixed amount of objects, this becomes a finite state machine. Finite state machine. Okay. So in finite state machine, that regular sets, so there's not much you can do. Okay. So we assume that the environment has potentially unbounded objects. In order for it to be able to characterize what is called Turing machines. Okay. Anyway, can I answer? All right. All right. So here's an example. I have 3 membranes. The only object is 0. There's only one molecule called 0. No other molecule. So the alphabet of this system is just singleton, 0. Okay. By the way, the rules that I'm going to describe are from biologists. They were the ones who suggested these rules, because apparently this happens in biology. I'm not a biologist, so I'm not going to pretend I know much about that. All right, so here, I have 3 membranes. 1, 2, 3. Rather than give a formal definition, here's a rule that says 2, 0, out, 0 in. What does this mean? It means if this rule occurs in a membrane containing at least 2 zeros, then 2 zeros will come out and 1 zero will come in. It's an exchange. I give out 2 zeros, 1 zero in. So for example here, I have 4 zeros. Then I can use this rule and take out 2 zeros and 1 zero will come in each place. Or I can use this rule twice, 2 instances, because I have to do it maximally parallel. So since I have 4 zeros here, if I can use this rule twice, meaning I will bring out 4 zeros and 2 zeros will come in. Is it good? But here, this says, so this is called antiport rule. This one says, if there's a zero in the outermost membrane, if I use this rule, 1 zero will be taken into this membrane. So 0 will be absorbed by this membrane. Okay? So if I have 4 zeros here, there are so many possible combinations. 2 zeros can be taken out, 1 zero will come in, whereas the 2 zeros here will be taken into the system. So it is non-deterministic. The idea is that in the molecules in the living cell, there's no deterministic pattern, right? So if I have 4 zeros here, either I take all 4 zeros in, yeah, meaning use this rule, use this rule 4 times, right? All 4 zeros will come in, yeah, in the first step. Or I use this twice, 2 zeros will go out and 1 zero will come in. Or I will use this once and I use this twice, right? How about these rules? Well, this rule is only applicable if there are already 2 zeros here, right? So therefore, in order for these rules to be applicable, you must have at least 2 zeros. Okay, so the question is, we say that the system will run. This is the initial configuration of the system. So you let it run according to what I've just described, right? If it holds, then you identify certain membranes that will be the output membranes. You count the number of zeros there, and that's the answer. In this particular case, I'm using this as an acceptor. What do I mean by this? I mean, I put zeros, and when it holds, I say the original number of zeros that I put in is accepted. So, if I put the input here is, there's only, at the beginning, there are only 4 zeros. No other zeros anywhere, right? So, when the system runs, and if there's a path that will bring it to a halting configuration, then I say that the 4 zeros is accepted. Is this clear? Right. So the question is, since this is non-deterministic, there are many possibilities, right? So what you do is try all possibilities and see whether there's a way to get to a halting, right? But this is a simple example. You see, if I only use this once, meaning bring out 2 zeros and bring in 1 zero, and I use this twice, I have 2 zeros here, yes, then what will happen? If I have 2 zeros here, then it will oscillate, right? And it will never stop. Therefore, that's not a good computation. That's one path that will lead to nowhere. If I use this twice, I am forced to use this twice. If I use this once, I am forced to use this twice because of the maximal parallelism. I cannot only use this once. I have to use this rule twice. Okay? So, what happens? This kind of rules are called simple out. So, the important thing here is this non-deterministic and maximally parallel. Meaning, if there are rules that are applicable to some objects that are still lying around, you must use the rules. You know? So, okay, let's see. Here. The only object is 0, that's the alphabet of the system. I put 4 zeros here, right? Then what are the choices? As I said before, if I only use this once, this rule once, then I am forced to use this twice, right? And then the system will oscillate. So in order to get the hope is that we want to get to a holding configuration, I have to use this twice. If I use this twice, the next thing will be, I have 2 zeros, right? Because 4 went out, 2 will come in, right? Because of this. And then the next will be like this. And then here, it halted. So therefore, what can I say? I say that the 4 zeros was accepted, right? And you can check that this system, very simple one, will accept in any number of zeros that's a power of 2. So if I put in a power of 2 zeros, the system will hold. Will hold if and only if the length of the sequence is a power of 2. And the number of steps, the number of parallel steps is logarithmic to the length of the sequence that I give. Yeah, because it's always dividing by 2, yeah. Now, so this is a very simple example. Here's a problem for Ravi. Where is it? Suppose I give you a system of this form. The only rules are this kind of rules or this kind of rules, right? And I want to know whether it will hold. You see, it's a simple, seems like a simple problem. Given such a system where the only object is 0, the only rules are of this type, right? And I start the system with some distribution of 0 somewhere in the membranes, and I want to know whether it will hold. So it's like the holding problem, right? That's an open problem. What do I mean by this? I mean, we cannot just say try all possibilities because it's just like a Turing. You cannot try all possibilities because of the unbounded number of objects outside, right? It can go on forever. So the question is whether this can simulate a Turing machine. We all know what the Turing machine. If there are 2 objects, not only 0 but say 1, you have 2 objects, two symbols, zeros and ones, then it's equivalent to a Turing machine. Anything that a Turing machine can do can be done by this machine and vice versa. Therefore, the holding problem for this system is undecidable. Right? Holding. Okay. Again, since I don't give definition, here's another one. I have one membrane. I have only one membrane. Yeah. And this is the outer smooth. There are only 2 objects. There are 2 objects, 0 and this marker. These are the rules. So at the beginning, I gave it 4 zeros. What happens? If I give it 4 zeros, which rules are applicable? There are 4 zeros. I can use this rule twice, or I can use this rule. But I use this rule once and use this rule twice, or I use this. If I use this rule once, I'm forced to use this rule twice because of maximal parallelism. Yeah. But if I use this rule, what will happen? If I give an even number of zeros, then I will have to bring in at least 2 markers, right? This, yeah. Then once you have a marker, it will oscillate. Therefore, there are so many paths, but the path that will bring you to a halt, you have to use this rule twice. What you get will be like this, and then apply it again, and then what happens? The last one will be like this. There's no more rule to apply. Once you get this symbol inside, there's no rule that's applicable. Therefore, you say that the system again is a power of 2. Okay, so this is just the basic, very simple example. And course, now we can use other rules. For example, here, the rule above says if you have, what is U? U is oh, by the way, I should have mentioned that the objects in a membrane can be represented by a string. So if there are 2 A's, 3 B's, and 3 C's, I could write A squared, B squared, and C. You know, so a string can represent the objects. It's not important how you order the symbols, right? So the first rule says, for example, if you have if you have at least 2 A's and 1 B and a C in a membrane, then it can evolve into an object called C. And the thing in the square bracket says the target membrane. So what this means is object C will go to membrane 1, another C will go to membrane 2, B will go to membrane 5, and E will go to membrane 3. That's what it means. You know? So if you have that rule in that membrane, the simple antipode rules that I gave in an example are just examples of rules. I have other possible rules. Right? So you have rules that are what are called catalytic, and so on. These are, I already gave this one. And you have rules that the first rule says, for example, if you have an object that is outside membrane I can go into membrane I and rename myself to object B. So A becomes B, and I go inside the membrane I. This one. The next one, the membrane division means if I have an object called A in membrane I can split into 2 membranes, J and K. In other words, I can create membranes. I can merge membrane, so on. Right? Okay, so these are examples of what people have looked at, and of course, once you create new rules, there's something to write. You get a new paper, right? So that's what so what I said earlier, that this kind of system can solve combinatorially hard problems, and the model I describe is non-deterministic. In other words, at each step you apply the rules, all the rules in parallel, right? But there might be several combination of rules, right? But the system becomes deterministic if at each step there's at most one combination of rules that is applicable. That's what we mean by not deterministic. Okay. So now people have shown that this kind of system can solve what is called the NP-hard problem. Is that something? Okay. There are problems called there are problems that are inherently are not solvable in polynomial time. By this I mean n squared, n cubed, and so on. All the known algorithms are exponential, 2 to the n, 3 to the n, 2 to the n squared, and so on, right? And in these problems that are exponentially hard, some of them are called NP complete. By NP complete means if you allow guessing, they can solve be solved efficiently. If you don't allow guessing, it takes exponential time currently. So these are called NP-hard problems, and so far nobody knows of a polynomial time algorithm for NP-hard problems. But what has been shown is that this system can solve NP-hard problems in polynomial time efficiently. Of course, there's a big caveat, and that is only if you can build these machines, right? Now, as I said, nobody has built this machine, but I heard that some people in Israel, Technion, are actually trying to build this system in the laboratory, and it seems that they claim that there's a good possibility that they might be able to do it. You know, of course they have to talk to the biologists to just make sure that they're using the right rules. So these things are called, this is a very simple example. What I said is that, I already mentioned this. The first one says that these systems are what you call universal, meaning complete, meaning they can simulate Turing machines. But if you make restrictions, then these are things that are, for example, you can show that I already mentioned this, that hard problems can be solved in polynomial time. Okay. And there are about 500 papers written in the subject, mostly theoretical, of course. Yeah. People have shown that such systems can be used in many areas, provided they can be built. Okay. But there are software simulations. In other words, if you give me a model of a membrane computer, I can write software to simulate this, right? But still, it's not scalable, right? But people have done this. If you are interested in in the introductory, there's an introductory monograph. The first one is in Springer, 2002. Just like membrane computing, it will lead you. And also there are some applications. Now, how did I get interested in this? My own area is theoretical computer science, just like Ravi here. Okay, and this model was introduced about 8 years ago, and there was a big question at the time, which remained open for a long time, and that is, suppose the system is not universal, meaning it's not equivalent to a Turing machine. Can you show that there's a hierarchy? The more membranes, the more you can do. Seems like a reasonable question. It's not universal. If you add one more membrane, can I do more? And this was open for some time, okay? And it turned out that this problem is related to what I've done a long time ago, even before probably became my student. And I was able to reduce the problem to what I've done a long time, and it can be shown that there's a hierarchy with respect to membranes. Another question might be, if there are two molecules, are two molecules better than one molecule, right? One object, or three molecules? Again, this can be done. There were questions about, can you convert any non-deterministic system into a deterministic system? It turns out that it's equivalent to a very long-standing open problem in complexity theory. I don't know if you've heard this. Have you talked this in your class?
I don't think they...
Okay. There's see how I do this. There's a result. There's a question, very big open question in complex theory, and that is, if you have a procedure that's non-deterministic, meaning you allow guessing, right? And the procedure requires a certain amount of space, a certain amount of space with respect to the size of the input, right? If you make this deterministic, will the deterministic procedure, is it enough to give the same amount of space? Am I making sense? The space, to convert non-deterministic to deterministic, you don't lose space. That's the question. Right? That's still open. Open since Ravi here was born. It turns out that the questions concerning membrane system, determinism and non-determinism can be reduced to this problem. So the problems are hard. That's what I said. Now, I don't know if there's an area called concurrent programming. Is this something familiar? Okay. Wait, I'll skip this. How much time I have?
About 10 minutes.
Oh, okay. All right, so let me skip. What I I have discussed is just the surface. I just wanted to give an example, a feeling of what membrane computing is about. And if you're interested, I give you references, and I'll also give a copy of this slide to the problem. Now I want to talk about spiking system. So let me give them a okay, so inside our brain are neurons, right? These neurons, this is from the, again from the internet, okay? I wanted to see how they are defined. So here, a neuron is composed of three main components. The first is called a dendrite. Here's an example of it. This is what? No, I mean, I did that thing.
Well, there's a red button on there. Press the red.
Oh, yeah, okay. Here's the dendrite. The dendrite receive information from other neurons. Okay. So, you have a bunch of neurons. Neurons communicate with each other. Okay. And the receiver unit is called a dendrite. Then, after it's received the information, it's processed by what is called a soma. That's not like that, that's biology. And then after that, if you want to send something, the axon will send the message to the other neuron. Okay. So this whole thing is called a neuron, and you have a bunch of neurons in the brain, right? And they are connected by the lines of connections are called synapses. So if you have a neuron here, there's an edge between the two neurons called synapse, right? And in this discussion, I will just limit my talk on what is called spikes. So the neurons send spikes to other neurons. The neurons, there are electrical charges. If the charge depends on the number of spikes, each neuron will collect spikes. If the number of spikes goes beyond a certain level, it triggers the neuron to send spikes to the neighboring neuron. So these are called spiking neurons. And what I already said, there are electrical impulses. And when the spikes accumulate within a neuron up to a certain level, it will send spikes to the neighboring neurons when it fits, right? And so this has been studied by many people. These are a couple of main references. Before I proceed, let me give it Okay. This was actually a movie that was done in the lab. So you have the dendrites, right? And these are spikes being sent. I'm not going to describe what's happening. So we are trying to model this, the computation of this spiking neural network. Okay. to the going back to the where we. Oh. So in this model, I'm going to represent the spiking neural network as a graph, finite graph. And each neuron will be represented by a node. The synapses are represented by edges. And as I said before, I'm just going to be interested in when the voltage, when the electrical impulse, or the number of, represented by the number of neurons within the network reaches a certain level, it spikes. So the spikes will be represented by the symbol A. Okay, and the number of spikes, since there's only one type of spike, A, in a neuron will be represented by A to the n. So if a neuron has A to the n, string A to the n, it means there are A spikes, n A's. Okay. Here's an example. Again, the definition. Again, I don't have time to give definition. Well, let me just give this example. Okay. So I have here 3 neurons. At this point, this neuron has how many spikes? 2, A squared. This neuron has 3 spikes. This neuron has 1 spike. And there's connection. Now, so you have to have rules that will involve the spikes, right? How do we define the rules? The rules are, in this particular case, will be controlled by what we call a regular expression. Is regular expression? So, here's a regular expression, A square star. What does it mean? It means, the star here means any number, right? I'm not sure. This represent, with a star means any number of possible, the thing inside will be repeated as many times as you want. So this represent any number of even A's. A square, A cube, A to the 4, A6, A8, and so on, right? This rule says if the number of neurons, the number of spikes in this neuron is contained in this regular expression, contained means it's represented by, it's one of the strings in this regular expression, then this rule is applicable. Is A squared contained here? The answer is yes, because square is part of this, right? If that is the case, then it says remove one, delete one spike here and send the spikes to the neighboring neighbors. Okay? The same thing here. What does this mean? It means that if the neuron contains exactly 7 spikes, then you remove 3 and send spike, 1 spike to the neighboring ones. So is this rule applicable? The answer is no, because there are 3, right? So the only rule applicable is this one, right? This says remove the 3 and send spike, 1 spike to its neighboring neighbor. And the same thing applies to the other neurons. So this is working in parallel also, okay? Yeah. So what happens? What happens is that you initially you identify certain neurons as the input neurons. You run the system according to the rules. Okay. When it holds, then we say that that's in this particular case, the initial distribution of the neurons is said to be been accepted. So it's an acceptor. You can also talk about this as a generator or a function computer. And it turns out, okay. It turns out that what I was saying. It turns out that Again, this can be connected to computations of Turing machines and things like called Petri nets. There's a model called Petri net, very important in concurrency. They can be made equivalent. So I'm saying that these models, although different, can be related to other parallel models of computation. And so many things that can be said about this one. Let's see, do I have? So I don't have time to give examples of how this operates. But, well, 2 minutes. I can't say much in 2 minutes. I have attempted to give a very, very short description of what Nebula computing is. I can give this complete slides, this set of slides to Ravi. If you're interested, you can check with Ravi. The URL here contains many things about Nebula computing if you're interested. Right? And here is about it.